Hi, my name's Martin Purnell, and welcome to Off-Grid Christianity, a weekly podcast for those who go or don't go to church, and where we can meet and hear from those that have made their faith count. This podcast series is to encourage via conversation, and you can contact us as well by email, ogc@accessradio.biz. That's ogc@accessradio.biz, and biz is spelled B-I-Z. Our website address is www.offgridchristianity.co.uk, and please, if you like these podcasts, could you hit the subscribe button? That'd be really helpful, thank you. So please enjoy today's guest, who is a writer and then some. Not only has he ghostwritten award-winning biographies, but has had success with science fiction. Our guest is also a conference speaker, voice artist, and writing coach. For several years, he hosted a podcast called the Creative Writers Toolbelt, giving practical advice and the often forgotten encouragement that we all need. In 2017, a handbook of the same name was released. He also blogs for the Association of Christian Writers. He is also a fundraiser manager, and from June 2025 is the head of development with the Academy of Ancient Music. Our guest has been associated with All Souls Langham Place Church and charity, yet for 20 years he had his own off-grid Christianity experience. So what happened? What has he learned from his own off-grid Christianity? What is a hybrid author? Why write science fiction? Where does he get inspiration for his Centauri, Survivors and Master series of books? Why do authors who are Christians write so many science fiction books? I'm thinking of C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, and modern-day authors like our guest and L.G. Jenkins. What is ancient music? In my case, anything pre-blues is ancient music. How buoyant is the market for Christian fiction writers? Do non-Christians buy these books? And finally, what has he learnt from ghostwriting about himself, and why do it anyway? Gives me great pleasure to ask all these questions and more, and have some great conversation as well with today's guest, and that is Andrew J. Chamberlain, but hopefully I can call him Andy. Would that be all right, Andy?
That would be absolutely fine, Martin. You can call me Andy.
You can call me Al. If only people would know what song I'm on about.
But you were going to break into song for a moment then. But
no, you don't want to hear me sing. No, you don't. So for those that don't know you, Andy, where are you living currently, please?
I live in Cambridge, in England, and I live with my wife. We have 2 kids. Both have left home now. One is married. Our daughter is married. She and her family live nearby. So we are also grandparents now, which is great fun. Hard work sometimes, but fabulous. Great fun. So yeah, that's me.
And of course, the great thing is when your daughter comes back, you can say, here they are. Bye.
Exactly. We take them with joy and we give them back with joy.
Very good. Well, Andy, before we go any further, 5 important, or maybe not so important, questions to ask you. So if you're sitting comfortably, fingers on the buzzers, no conferring. Question number 1, Andy. If you could invite anybody from history for an evening meal, alive or dead, so that you could ask them questions, who would it be?
Well, I was thinking about this question, and first thing I thought was, I'm sure when Martin asks this question, everybody says Jesus, possibly.
Has been known, yeah.
But I was thinking about this. The other person I might pick is a guy called William Wilberforce.
Very good.
Who was late 18th century, early 19th century preacher, philanthropist, somebody who had tremendous impact on the church and on the social life of this country for decades and arguably centuries after his life. So if I can't have Jesus, I'll have William Wilberforce is my answer.
I'm going to have to change this question because it's been in the past 2 or 3 months where people are saying, I'm sure you want me to say Jesus. And I'm going, no, I don't actually. But I'm going to have to put outside of the Bible, I think. So you can be my script writer, my ghost script writer. There we go. Question 2 then. Who's your favourite biblical character or favourite biblical story or favourite parable, please?
Definitely the prophet Elijah.
Ooh.
Well, I say definitely the prophet. I mean, there's loads of them, but I would pick him. And the reason I'd pick him is because many people who know of the prophet Elijah know about his big bust up with the prophets of Baal and all the things that happened there. But also there's a very interesting story in his life where after that incident, he has what amounts to a kind of mental breakdown. He has a crisis, and he goes and sits under a tree and says, I've had enough. Obviously, he's doing the kind of millennia ago Old Testament version of that. But for many people who are maybe struggling with mental health or are just struggling is perhaps not even the right word, just because life is tough for everyone. And we all have moments where we think, oh, I can't be doing with this.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really instructive story. I won't go into it all now, but I'd encourage anyone listening to this, if they don't know the story of what Elijah did after his big showdown with the prophets of Baal, to go and read that and see how he behaved, how he acted, how God dealt with him.
Great answer. And you can throw in there as well Jeremiah, because, people thought he was a bit depressive, wasn't he?
Yeah.
One of my heroes, Jonah, because he was really fed up when he sat underneath the tree afterwards. Well, come on, then, God, sort it out. What do you mean you're not going to beat him up? and the chapter ends. It's like, no, that's not fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some wonderful grumpy old guys in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
From a psychological and emotional point of view, the stories of a lot of people in the Old Testament, the way they act, the things they say, the things they feel, that just rings very true. And it's very encouraging, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer. Thank you. Okay, Andy, question 3. And for those that don't know, we had about half-hour chat beforehand and I was having mini rants. So this would be quite interesting because I've never met you before. So it was quite funny, really. Question 3. If you were Prime Minister for the day and could change any law or impose a new law, Prime Minister Andy, what would it be?
This isn't going to be a massive rant, but I'd just say it. I would probably make social media illegal for anyone under the age of 16 and I would ban mobile phones from classrooms.
Round of applause.
And the reason I'm saying that is, aside from the emotional content of this subject, as far as I can see, that the research data suggests that the proliferation of social media and the phones that carry it are having a detrimental effect on young people. And that I can't quite understand why any government of any colour hasn't really had a go at this, because it seems to me that the data is pretty convincing. It would need to be thought through and done properly. But basically, that's what I'd do.
Couldn't you sort of put the age up a bit to like 60?
Well, I could do. I mean, just to let you into a secret, I will be 60 this year in a couple of months' time. So maybe I could put it up to 60 and then I could kind of, be doom scrolling forever after my birthday. You've got to set a sensible age somewhere. 16 is an important age, rightly or wrongly, in law for us in this country and in the United Kingdom. And so you could put it there.
For me, the most important thing about mobile phones, obviously to contact your loved ones and anybody else. But on a Saturday, if you're out and about, you need to know what the football score is. You do need your mobile phone for that.
You do need it for that. One team in particular, I'm sure, Martin,
Might be, yeah. Also, I have to say, I do like WhatsApp. So I wouldn't count WhatsApp as social media.
You might have to tell people what WhatsApp is because some people may not know, but it is a very useful little tool to bring people together just to chat about things and check things. So yeah, absolutely.
Trouble is, it's owned by a company that is really the number one company for social media. So there's the irony. But anyway, thank you. Great answer. Yes, you haven't been the first person to suggest that, and no doubt you won't be the last either. Question 4, Andy. Outside of family events, what has been your most enjoyable day out?
Hands in the air. I'm cheating on this question, partly because I didn't read it properly, and I'm now going to mention a family event.
Oh,
but it's the best day out I've had, in a way.
I'll let you off. I'm in a good mood.
I'll try not to break the rules again. Quick story, but when our kids were younger, we've got an older daughter, a younger son, and our daughter was probably 11, and she said, I want to go to Disneyland or somewhere. She says this. She just says it at the dinner table one night. And so her mother and I say, like, when you're 13, we'll take you because then your brother will be a bit older and he'll be taller enough and we can go on the rides and it will be great.
Yeah.
So we forget about this afterwards. And then several months later, we're talking about the family holiday and daughter says, you said we could go to Disney. So we're like, we better go because, we've said to her that we'll do it. So we've got to do it. So we did go and we went for her 13th birthday. So we were there while she was 13. And so she gets to, and if you go to Disneyland, I'm sure it's still the same now it was then. This is about 20 years ago. If it's your birthday, it doesn't matter how old you are. They give you a sticker thing, like it's my birthday. And all the characters that are dressed up, they'll say happy birthday to you.
Oh, wow.
So we went around this thing. He's got this badge on. Of course, they do it more with the kids, but they'll do it anyway. And like 38 characters or something silly all said happy birthday to us. And we went round the place and we went on the rides and we went to the special restaurant. It was a great day. The root of it was an important lesson for us as parents, which is when you say to your kids you're going to do something, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
And then we had a great day out as well. So that's my answer to that one.
No, that's very good. I promised my son when he was 6 or 7, there were 3 things we're going to do. I've achieved one of them. Yeah.
Are the others contingent on something else happening? Are they out of your control?
Yeah, sort of. The big one, of course, was I was going to take him to Wembley to watch England play football. England were playing Scotland. It was brilliant. I took him down there. We were going to meet all my mates who are big England fans as well. But we got there so early, I thought, right, let's go to Trafalgar Square. So I was wearing my England shirt. My son was wearing his England shirt. And of course, what people might not have realised was that 10,000 Scotsmen who had the tickets. They all congregated at 12 o'clock in Trafalgar Square. And I kid you not, we were the only two people with England shirts walking through with just this Navy tartan army all around us. And it was brilliant. We were treated so royally.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah. That was a great, enjoyable day.
Straight to the Scot.
And the fact we might have won. Oh, wait a minute, we did. Question 5. What has been your most embarrassing moment, please, Andy?
Many years ago, I was on holiday in Jersey with my family and a friend of mine. And for some reason, I decided that we went out one evening, and my mate and my sister, and I thought, I'm going to have a drink. So I did have a drink and another one, to the point where I don't remember the latter part of that evening. But it did apparently involve me lying on the pavement in a rather the worse for wear, let's say. So I'm told, I don't even remember this. So I'm told by my sister, of all people, some guy's walking his dog past me. I'm lying on the pavement. They're all trying to get me back. And this guy's walking his large dog past me. And I decide that's the moment to start barking at the large dog. So the dog goes nuts. The guy's holding onto it, trying to kind of keep it from attacking me. And I only heard about this the next day when I had a very sore head. And in so many ways, it was not a good moment. And it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a very violent chihuahua.
Yes, it could have been. For all I knew, it might have been a chihuahua, but that incident happened 40 years ago. I have never got drunk or even close to it. It was that much of a character building experience for me that I've never done it since at all, or got anywhere near it.
If only someone had it on video.
Oh, gosh.
To see you do a dog impression, that would have been
Yeah, I mean, if that happened now, it might have gone viral or something. It's terrible to think about.
On social media.
Yeah.
Which obviously you just banned, so you'd be okay.
Absolutely. Maybe I should have banned it for everybody. I don't know.
Thank you for those great answers. I think it's only fair because my long introduction is to say who you are. During my brief research, it was a throwaway line that you actually gave to me in an email. I thought, whoa, this is our introduction now, and then some. Now, it might mean for the rest of the podcast, we don't actually get any further and we won't know any more about your writing and your ghost writing.
That's fine. We'll see where we go.
Yeah, let's just be open and see where we go. And it was that line you said whereby that for nearly 20 years, you had your own off-grid Christianity experience. For those that are listening today as well that would say, well, yeah, that's how I feel. Let's just go for it if that's all right, Andy, and start from the very beginning.
Yeah, sure.
What happened?
I mean, I would preface it by saying not off-grid in the sense that I stopped believing anything, but off-grid more in a deeper within myself sense, I would say. But I'll tell you the story and I hope it's a blessing to some people.
Yeah, go for it.
If I go back to when I was a child, I went to a public school. It was a cathedral school. The cultural background to me growing up was quite high church. I was a chorister in this cathedral school for a while. My family weren't people of faith. So I wasn't born into a family and into a Christian culture. So my engagement with Christian culture was through this quite high church, cathedral related thing. Just after I left school, so I'd have been 17, nearly 18, my sister had been going to some church youth club, completely different church. And she invited me along, and it was run by this guy who was the most off the wall charismatic. I don't know where he got it from. It was absolutely bonkers, this place. I'd never seen anything like it. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'll have some of this. So I came to faith in that context. And I think even then, as an 18-year-old, it didn't really know very much about anything. Some of it, I think I would say, that's a little bit, I'm not quite sure about that. But a lot of it, the fundamentals of it were like, yeah, I'm sold. I mean, I think in a way I had some sense of faith already. And I thought, I believe this. I'm going to be a person of faith. I'm going to follow Jesus. That's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. And I did that. Went to uni, met my now wife, we got married, we served in a Baptist church for a number of years, which was great. And then after that, around about 2000 time, just before 2000, I'd say, we got involved with the Vineyard movement. It's tricky to characterize churches and different people have different perceptions, but I would say the Vineyard movement, which I loved and which I still love now, I'd say it was quite a gentle expression of the charismatic movement, and it just suited us perfectly, and we got involved in that, and we ended up, my wife and I, leading a Vineyard church for a number of years. And I wanted to see what God would do, and I wanted to serve God, and I wanted to follow Jesus, and I wanted to do all of that stuff, however that manifested itself. And we ended up doing some things where we went out on the streets. This was in Cambridge, where I live. And we basically offered prayer to anybody who wanted it. And we kind of framed it very much as prayer for healing. And I stood in one of the most public spaces in Cambridge, and I spoke the gospel to people, and I prayed for healing for people, as did a number of other brave souls that came out with me.
Yeah.
And we did that for, I can't remember exactly, a good few months, I would say. And in my perception, from what I could see of what was happening, some of the people we prayed for were blessed. A lot of them were blessed by being prayed for. They said, yes, we prayed for them. They were very happy. But I never saw what I wanted to see. I had something in my mind. I had an expectation, let's say, of what God was going to do.
What exactly did you want to see?
I wanted to see blind people given sight. I wanted to see people who had expressed a very specific ailment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were in pain in some way or something. I wanted to see them able to say categorically that they were free of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to see something which could not be interpreted as a subjective impression,
yes.
I suppose. And that was my agenda, and that's what I brought to it. In the years reflecting on that time since then, and even probably at the time, I thought, I've brought my own agenda to this. And yet I'd said, God, you do what you want to do. And God does do what he wants to do. And, it may well be that God did heal people through that, but I didn't see it, or I didn't see what I wanted to see. So in the end, I got to the point where I said to God, if you don't turn up and do what you've said in your scriptures you're going to do, I can't do running the church. I can't do it.
Yeah.
There's been a few times in my life where I felt I've heard God speak clearly to me. And this was one of those occasions. And I felt like God said to me, that's okay. You can stop if you want to. Whatever you're doing, you can stop, because I love you more than I love your ministry. And I kind of took that to heart.
Yeah.
And I did stop. But the fact that I felt God say that to me, I think that aligned with something deeper in me, which was I was always aware of God's love. I welcome the opportunity to talk to you and to say that, because I've said that to other people, because in a sense, I think from my story, as I tell it to you, that the important thing about my story is not so much the specifics, but how anyone listening to this may be able to take elements of it and interpret it into their own life.
Brilliant.
That's one of those points that actually, like, to anybody hearing this, if you're working in the church, and people work hard in the church, or they're working, whatever they're doing, working hard, doing their thing for God, the radical truth is that God loves each of us more than he loves the work we do or the ministry that we do. So anyway, I kind of held on to that and I stopped. And that was 2007. So not quite 20 years ago, but getting on that way.
So when you stopped,
yeah,
you obviously have to go and tell people, oh, I'm stopping because God told me. What kind of reaction did you get?
I didn't say to people, I'm stopping because God told me to, because it was my choice.
Yes.
I said to people, I can't do this. A lot of people I said, I feel like I've done what I can here, which was partly true and partly not true.
Mm-hmm.
The truth was I had felt the cost of doing something really expensive, which is to go out in public. And anybody who's done this will know what it takes. You go out on the streets in public in front of everybody. Anything could happen. Anyone could come up to you. And you're saying things about Jesus. You are representing Jesus. Not that anything terrible happened to me. I mean, one or two people came up who had some interesting views about Christian faith, but that's fine. But I said to people, I need to stop. Some people were upset. A lot of people in the church were upset. I was upset because I loved the people in the church. They were lovely. It wasn't the people in the church that were the issue at all for me. I gave it 6 months, I think. People in the network. I mean, it wasn't Vineyard's fault. It wasn't Vineyard's problem. People said, you need to do it for a period of time, then you can stop. So that's what I did. Before I had led the church, I was working in marketing and tech consultancy and doing all that kind of stuff. And I managed to get back into that. So that's what I did. And I still went to church. I still did a lot of the things which people do as just one of the punters in church, as one of the civilians. I went along and I said my prayers and all that. And I didn't do it in a cynical sense. I was still a Christian. I still believed. Nothing, that hadn't changed. Crazily, I still believed in that approach to the faith, but I couldn't practice it in that context anymore. So I stopped. And then For a number of years, I just waited to see what would happen, I suppose. I don't know what I thought. I just thought I'm just going to get on with my life and do other things. For a number of years, I felt like there would be moments when I was saying to God, I wasn't sorry that I'd stopped. I wasn't sorry that I'd stopped, and I felt forsaken. I felt like God had forsaken me. And in fact, I think he did. I do believe that. I think he did. And it's a difficult, at that point in the story, it was difficult for me to reconcile what I thought about these conflicting things. And I do believe a lot of people are living actually at different points in their lives where there are things which are not reconciled and which they're called to live with. So everything is not neat and tidy. Things happen, and as people of faith, we want to see God's will in them. We want to try and understand what he's doing. And I think that's fine to do that. But the fact is that there will be elements of life where you just look at them and you think, I don't understand why that's happened. And one of the disciplines of the Christian life, I think, is to just live with that and sit with it. Not to try and explain it if it's unexplainable, but not even to pretend it's fine, because it's hard and it's fine and it's not fine, but just to sit with it. I went along like that for a number of years. And
can I just stop you? Because what you said there, and we will come back to it.
Yeah, sure.
But I think you've raised a really, really valid point here. The podcast I recorded 2 days ago, Bob Prater from America. We were talking about this thing because he has been prayed for and God healed him of something amazing. But I then said, well, how do you explain that to other people like my wife, who is registered blind? Why hasn't God healed her? And he fully understood that, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It then provoked an amazing conversation, of which, everyone should listen to the Bob Prater interview. But let's take this a bit further, right?
Yeah,
it's an interesting detour to then come back onto what happened in your Christianity. If you ask my wife, she will tell you that it's in all those dark times that everyone else thinks they've got, that she starts to find the small, quiet voice of God. And so spiritually, she's flying. Whereas me, I'm Mr. Plod Along and like Mr. Grumpy. I remember saying, before you even got married, how come God always speaks to you and never me? And she said, when you've been in bed for 18 months, you start to hear the small voice, you know who he is. Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to spend time in bed for 18 months. I got the answer, though. If that helps to you to use as a springboard to carry on that conversation, what do you think?
I think what you're saying aligns with an understanding I have of this. I would also say, compared to what other people have had to go through in life, I haven't had it hard, particularly. There's been some issues, and everybody has them. But actually, when you think about what some people have to bear, in a sense, it's not who's had the worst time of it. It's more a general principle that there will be things in life which we cannot explain. And we don't know why God lets them happen. We don't. And I guess one of the people who I feel some affinity with and could have said would have been on my top 5 favorite list of biblical characters would have been Job. And it's very instructive for people who are going through a really hard time and difficulties to look at Job and his life and his experience. A series of terrible things happened to Job, and he doesn't curse God, and he still worships God. It's almost a paradox. It just seems crazy, but the appropriate response to incomprehensible difficulties is to get on our knees and worship God. And it doesn't mean that everything's lovely, because it's not, but that's where real faith is formed, in that kind of crucible of things are tough, but nevertheless, I'm going to worship God.
Yeah.
And actually, you do end up that you don't come out of that with a long face or feeling miserable. I think you can feel developed through it.
It's interesting, though, something else you said, that the church were like supportive of you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I bet you there are people listening today who say, well, that's not my experience in my church. It might not even be their experience in their own vineyard.
Yeah.
It could be somewhere else.
It could be.
So it shows you the maturity of your church, I would have thought, to say, hey, do you know what? That's really good. Step away. We'll still support you. Go and find out whatever you're trying to find out, but we're not going to ridicule you. They didn't throw burning coals on you, which I think is phenomenal to hear.
Nobody gave me a hard time.
Wow.
It was difficult. It was hard. If they had, it wouldn't have changed anything anyway.
Yeah. So meanwhile, let's bring you back on track then. What happened next?
So since that time, so nearly 20 years ago, 18 years ago, whatever it is, there have been what I would call a couple of significant waypoints. My wife Ruth and I, we have enjoyed going to a retreat centre in North Wales called St Byno's. Some people may have heard of it. It's a Jesuit retreat center. So it's a Catholic retreat center, but anybody can go. It's a great place. It feels very spiritual there. It's a wonderful place. And I remember going on retreat there 10 years ago, maybe, or something. So at some point during the process for me, I should think I was probably, as I often was then, quite grumpy with God and quite annoyed with God and telling God what I thought of him in no uncertain terms, all this kind of stuff. They have in that place a number of different chapels, and some are really beautiful places, like sunny, beautiful plants, whatever. It's great. They did have then one chapel. It's a small room. It would have only have been about 4 meters cubed or something, and the whole room was painted dark red, and they had the Stations of the Cross. So there's depictions of Christ taking his cross around the room, and in the corner they had a cross, and this cross is just made of nails. So it was quite a brutal space, really. And I felt quite at home there because I felt like God has forsaken me at some level. So this space suits me.
Yeah. And
actually, I think sometimes a space can reflect well how we are. And so for me, that was it. And I sat in this space and I looked at this cross, which was, as I said, all made of nails. So it's quite, deliberately, I think they created it deliberately as this kind of stark kind of space. And I was grumbling away at God as I did. And I felt like this was another one of those moments where I felt quite strongly that on this occasion, it was Jesus that was speaking to me. My sense was, he said to me, "Don't despair when the Father forsakes you. I was forsaken as well, but I have been restored. I am restored." So something that I knew then intellectually hit my heart, I think, which was, of course, Jesus said, "Why have you forsaken me?" on the cross. And for me, that is one of the kind of genius moments, and that's not saying enough of it really, of the faith, is that is within our faith, is that the Saviour knows what it is to feel bereft, knows what it is to despair, knows what it is to be forsaken. And that was a great comfort to me. And like the thing about God loves you more than your ministry, I think it's not that it's only particular for me, it's a universal general principle. Jesus knows what it feels like to be forsaken. No other savior, no other prophet, no other holy person or guru or any of that can say that. Jesus knows what it is to be forsaken by God, and yet he was restored. So in the succeeding years, I held on to that as a point of saying, well, Jesus knows what this feels like. I mean, I've got my sense of why I would felt forsaken, and other people would have their own version of that. And the message would be the same. Jesus knows what that feels like. So that happened. And then I'd say probably about 5-6 years ago, I cannot explain it really. There's a very strange moment. This would have been 2019, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was coming to the end of 2018. And for no obvious reason, I just felt like God say to me, "Your time of feeling forsaken is now coming to an end." And I said to God, "Really? What's that about then? Why? What?" Because there wasn't a big light show. I mean, so there wasn't anything dramatically changed in my life. That was the only thing that happened in the period of time around then was that my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, passed away in the early part of 2019. And I don't know whether that has anything to do with it. I don't pretend to understand all the dynamics of what was happening then. But I felt like God was saying, we're coming to the end of this time of forsakenness. And the interesting thing that happened, because I stopped leading in the Vineyard Church, my wife stopped as well. She had to stop. The way the model worked there, the two of us were leading. So because I stopped, she had to stop. So person who, in a sense, suffered the most because of my decision to stop leading was my wife. Just because I choose to stop, it doesn't mean she has to stop leading. So she then pursued a calling into the Anglican Church, and she trained to be a priest. And around about 2019, she was in the middle of her training. She was going to different churches, sort of on placement, and we were doing all that. And Easter 2019, she's on placement in this little church out in the middle of nowhere. And we went to the Maundy Thursday service that year, tiny little church. To his credit, the Bishop of Ely came along. We had this little Maundy Thursday service. There's about 20, 25 of us there, or 30, something maybe like that. Who knows whether that's anything significant as well. But anyway, the bishop turned up and we have our Maundy Thursday service. There's nothing charismatic about this service. It was a liberal high service, if you want to put it that way. And at the end of it, we all troop into the little chapel in this tiny church. The priest who was running the service brought in because it was quite a high church, they had a kind of cross with the host, with the bread in it. They were doing all that. They brought it in, they sat it down and said, right, we're going to have a short time of prayer and reflection. It's one of those times like we've all had them in church and then it's fine. So we sit there, and honestly, the sense of the power of the Holy Spirit suddenly at that moment was just off the scale. I've been involved in the charismatic movement for 40 years, and I have rarely, if ever, felt anything like it. And no one said, "Come, Holy Spirit," at the beginning. The whole show wasn't even being run by people who would call themselves charismatics. Mm-hmm. Nobody put the smoke machine on, nothing at all. And the Holy Spirit just came at that moment. So Ruth, my wife, was with me, and I turned to her, I said, "Can you feel that?" She said, "Yeah." Now, some of the people there, I would say they could feel something, maybe some of them couldn't, I don't know, but she could certainly feel it, and I trust her judgment. I sense God saying to me, this whole forsaken thing, we're going to kind of bring that to a close soon. What I took from that experience was sometimes God does something which is very obvious and clear cut, like he'll speak a word of wisdom to people, or he'll heal someone, or something very obvious and clear will happen. And other times, I think he just wants to bring people into his presence, and we don't fully know what he's doing. In a sense, when you think about it for more than 2 seconds, why would we know? Because he's God and he just does his thing. Sometimes it's not tidy and neat. And that was one of those moments. But I absolutely know that the power of God was very powerfully present at that time, not just for me, for a number of people in that space. And then I would say most recently, and probably by most recently, I'd say probably in the last year or so, I have felt as if God is saying, okay, now you're done with this. You are no longer forsaken. If you like, I want you to come out of that. And I feel like I have come out of that. There's no particular point at which I can say, I've stopped doing that now. It's like it's been like a process, and I think many things in life are like that. I've learned something from this experience and these years, which I could not have learned, I don't think, from a day or a week or even a year, maybe. It's just taken a long time for me to learn this and to be changed and formed in the way that God's forming me. And I'm now looking at what's happening in the church. And this is another, for me, an interesting thing. What's happening in the church now in England, in the United Kingdom, in the West, and across the world, potentially, there are some amazing things happening now. So although the world is in a very difficult place at the moment, in many ways, and everybody feels it at all kinds of levels, I think I could say that I have not been more excited about the potential for the church and the potential for what God is doing in the world. I haven't been more excited about it as I am now in my 40 years as a Christian. There's some amazing things happening. I feel very ready to kind of get back into it. And that's an aspect of my story over these last 18 years, as it would be.
Well, that's very interesting, because you know nothing about me apart from my little rant for half an hour before we started.
We could talk about Bristol City as well, but yeah,
we did. I could rant about that all the time. But what you don't know is that I have felt that I've been in the wilderness for the past 20 years. I believe that I'm actually coming out of my wilderness period this year. I've been doing the podcast for nearly 3 years. I feel I've been doing it obediently for God. I know God asked me to do it. But let's look at, first of all, the fact that God used the word forsaken, which you understood, it was personal to you.
Yeah.
There are other people that God would have used a different word that would have been applicable to them. So hopefully that gives a bit of clarity for those that are listening today. In those 18 years, what have you learned, first of all, about God? And then secondly, what have you learned about yourself and your Christian faith?
One of the interesting things I think I've learned about God is, this is a mystery, really, and it applies to everyone. He's really interested in being with people. So there is a place absolutely for each and every one of us to do stuff, because there's things to be done. And I mean, they could be big things or small things. You might have an old person who's dependent on you and you need to help them out because they don't know one end of their computer from the other. Let's say.
Yes.
You might need to make somebody a cup of tea and just listen to them chat for 10 minutes. You might have to look after your kids. You might have to go out and earn money. God might be prompting you to talk to somebody at work about the gospel.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. There's stuff to do, but also God loves us and wants to spend time with us. And that's hard because a lot of the time we're going, okay, God, I'm here. Hello. What's going on, mate? Here we are. And it doesn't feel like there's much coming back. And this is why I say it's a bit of a mystery. one of the things that comes back to me again and again during my time is that actually, for all my ranting and raving at God, he wants to spend time with me. There's nothing special about me in that sense. We are all precious to him, and he wants to spend time with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that will involve wrestling with the process of engaging with him, wrestling with the silence that we often encounter because we don't hear from him. That's what I've learned about God. What I've learned about myself, really frustratingly, is that I only change slowly. And I think any of us, only change slowly, and God only changes us slowly. Obviously, in our life and culture, we want a thing and we get a thing. We want a thing now and we get it tomorrow, or we get it in a couple of days. We want something off Amazon, we order it and it arrives. We want to communicate with somebody. There's a million ways to do it now. Everything's quick.
Social media.
Yeah, social media. Now, a lot of that is good. I'm not against that in many ways, but in the process of forming people, it seems takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking not just a day or a month or a year, but years, which is really frustrating. But that is the economy of God. That's the way it works. For some things, changing people's hearts takes time. I've learned that about myself, and I think it's probably a general thing.
It can also be summed up as actually is character building. This is what I was told 20 years ago when I had to give up my radio career to look after a very ill wife and a little baby boy. This was going to be character forming, and that $1 million wouldn't be able to pay for the training that I was about to go through. And I understood that, and he knew why he's saying it, because I was a training officer before going into radio, so I understood that. Consequently, the past 18 years that you've had, you weren't exactly giving up on your faith. Yes, there might have been times when you were holding on by your fingernails, but it's character building. So if we go back 18 years when you were a leader of a church,
yes,
okay, in my time machine, we go back there, and you today can tell your 18-year-old self, this is who I am. What would you like to tell him?
Well, I think all I'd say to myself from 18 years ago is it will be okay. I think there are some things we couldn't tell our younger selves because we have to experience them. So all I would say is it will be all right. It will work out. And it does. And it is, you're right, it is character building. So things happen in life and we think, how am I going to face this? How am I going to cope with this? And in coping with them, we build our character. What I would also say in the mix with that is it is okay to not be content or happy with what's happening. I really think there's a model which Scripture demonstrates, particularly in the Old Testament, again and again, that it's okay to go to God and complain and lament. And in fact, I think it's necessary, because if we don't go through that process, if we don't go through the process of lamenting, we'll still feel it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you're angry with God and you don't express that anger to God, you still feel it anyway. But if you don't process it, it just lingers and festers. So there is something essential about going to God. And as the Psalms show us many times over, you can go to God, you can get grumpy with God. And believe me, I've been there, I've bought the ticket, I've done all this. You get angry with God, you get grumpy, you rant and rave at God, but hold on to the fact that he does love you, and that brings you through. I mean, everybody's got that choice. Do you, at the end, you can do that, but in the end, you either give up completely on God or you say, no, you're still God. And you're still on your knees in front of him. And that's how character is formed. But it's not pretty. It's a messy business, but it's okay.
So what if then you and I are having a pint tonight, okay, and I say to you, do you know what? I've got a cracking idea. With all the experience that you've learned in the past 18 years, let's form a church together. Only what you did 18, 20 years ago, what would you do differently now in the church that we're going to open tomorrow morning? What would you do differently?
Well, I could give you one answer to that, which I think would sound a bit left field, but it is. So one of the things I would do is putting this on myself as a church leader, not on the way Ruth, my wife, would have done things, or the Vineyard would have done things. It's on me. I didn't put enough of due reverence on Holy Communion in the services. So I don't think there was anything wrong with what we did. And I'm saying this in the context of being somebody who would call themselves a charismatic Christian. I think properly and reverently approached, communion, Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, whatever you want to call it, it's an amazing thing. And it needs to be approached in that right way. Some of this might be age, some of it might be I'm just getting old. I like the Anglican liturgy. I think liturgy can be helpful in creating an environment and a space to approach God. The Church of England liturgy around communion, I think, is helpful. So I would be careful about how I did that in the church. What else would I do? I think I would consistently encourage people to do what's in front of them for each other.
What do you mean?
Many years ago, I was talking to, like, every church should have a wise old lady in it, and so
Absolutely.
absolutely, we want a wise, more than one.
And maybe the occasional wise old bloke.
Wise old bloke, wise old people is good. But in this story, it's wise old lady. So
Yeah.
I'm in the church, she wasn't that old, but anyway, wise older lady, let's say. And I'm talking to her about, we're trying to seek God's will. What should I do? What should I be doing in my life? What should I do? Seeking God's will, all this. And she said, very often what you've got to do is just whatever's in front of you. And I thought, that's right. So, like, if you are an eager Christian and you're in church and you're thinking, what is God calling me to do? It may well be that what he's calling you to do in part is go on the tea and coffee rota, put the chairs out, do the PA. Like, church is just full of jobs, millions of jobs. Do a stint with the kids, whatever. A lot of the time, you've got to do what's in front of you. Not all the time. Sometimes it's something different. But a lot of the time, even if God's asking you to preach to millions of people one day, he might be asking you to go and see old Mrs. Norris the next and have a cup of tea with her. Or he might be asking you to put the chairs out. Or he might be asking you to put the vacuum around or whatever. And it's all, in a sense, it's all the same service. None of it's more important than the other. I don't know how we got onto this, but that would be something that I would be saying to people in the church context is learn who each other are, learn who the people around you are, get to know them, be interested in them, look for ways to serve people in very simple ways. But yeah, I would do that as well.
Great answer. Can I just add on to that? But don't touch the PA unless you know what you're doing. Please.
Don't touch the PA without permission. Yeah. It's not a toy.
And you think you might know how to deal with it, but you don't.
Get the training.
There's nothing worse. Oh, here comes my mini rant now. Oh, the number of people I have met who think they know what they're doing on a PA because, oh, look, this mixing desk looks quite, I'll just use that fader. No, you haven't got a clue. There's something about Christians and church PA that they think they know everything. You don't. Thank you. Rant over.
Triggered you, Martin, haven't I? Don't touch the PA without a responsible adult present.
No, exactly.
But anyway, this is sort of connected to this. I remember a couple of quick stories from when I was at university. In university, I'm not politically on the left, but on the left at university, there was the Labour Club and there was the Socialist Workers. And the Socialist Workers wouldn't do anything in the Students' Union.
Really?
Now, it may be different now, but this is like years ago. They wouldn't join things. They wouldn't help. They wouldn't do anything. And I thought, if you aren't going to help, don't stand up and say anything about how you can make the world a better place. And I have no time for people anywhere on the spectrum who they just want to stand up and shout. They just want to stand up and say their thing. I'm like, shut up. I'm not interested. If you don't help, my friends in the Labour Club, they would help. So I had time for them. A similar story, there was, as a student at uni, you could volunteer. This is just charitable work. You can volunteer to help. This wasn't political stuff. It was just going and helping. And there was a lady that ran this thing. And I was a person of faith at this point. And she knew I was one of these insert expletive Christians. She didn't like it. And she ran this thing. It was called Student Community Action. And she didn't like me because I was one of these jolly Christians. And then I volunteered for one of her things. I volunteered to drive the van to go and volunteer at a school in the city where my university was, where there were quite severely disabled children in a little school. And we used to go and visit them every week. And when I volunteered to do that, her attitude to me changed completely because now I was helping. Now I was volunteering. And I thought I really learned an interesting lesson from that. I mean, I've talked about God wants us just to be with him and be present with him, which he does, and he loves us, but also do what's in front of you. If you want to do something in the kingdom, do what's in front of you. And it won't be glamorous, but just do it. Whatever it is, just go and do it. I think that's great advice for anyone.
You are preaching getting your hands dirty for Christ, which I think I might have mentioned right at the very front end.
You did, yeah.
That's what you're doing. That's about being in the community, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. You might not enjoy it sometimes. The Christian life is very unglamorous a lot of the time. But so what? Just go and do it anyway. Make the tea, put the vacuum in, whatever.
Except the PA.
Don't touch the PA.
Thank you. Have we said that enough times yet?
We might say it one more time. I mean, I do joke with people. Like, I've never met anybody to date who's felt a calling and ministry to stacking chairs.
That's true.
I have never met.
No, I have met somebody.
Have you?
Yes. Carry on.
All right. There's only one person in the world, and you've met them, Martin, who's ever had a calling to stacking chairs. But every church that's got chairs, someone's got to stack them, someone's got to get them out and put them back.
Yeah.
I think I've made that point.
That's very good. I know a Christian who really actually, and I wish he hadn't done this because I've been doing it ever since. He felt that he should cut neighbours' grass. If they just need it, he would just go and cut it for them.
Yeah,
and I wish I'd never, ever met him because I do that now for our neighbours.
It's a wonderful thing to do. It's great. Honestly, the world is full of people who are shouting at each other at the moment. And I'm going to have a little rant now.
Oh, go for it, please.
People who are shouting stuff, people who think they can put stickers and posters on every bit of street furniture all over the place, as if somehow this is going to make more people hear their message or get their, make their message more viable. And I just think, don't do that. Go and help someone. Go and actually do something that is good for somebody else. And then when you've done that for a while, I think in some people's cases, maybe 10 or 20 years, then you can start to form a theological framework or something. You can think some thoughts about how to do good for people on a broader level. But if you don't want to get stuck in, then you haven't got a right to say anything.
You haven't heard the previous podcast, the previous 2 podcasts that I recorded earlier this week.
Are we getting a bit of a theme here now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And what's even more interesting is that you told me who your football team was that you support, not that you played for. And this gentleman concerned, he is mad about West Ham.
Yes.
And so if I can say, listen to the Dave Mann podcast and what he's doing in Newham and what they've done as a community.
Great.
Unbelievable. It is fantastic. It's another chap getting his hands dirty for Christ. Bob Prater also recorded this week. I tell everybody, I only ever do 1 episode a week. I've done 3 this week. It's just been manic. But all 3 have got a similar theme.
Yeah.
It's about getting your hands dirty for Christ. Same with Bob Prater.
I mean, now is a great time. This is kind of a good rant.
Oh, good.
Now is a great time to get your hands dirty for Christ. As I said to you a few minutes ago, there's something happening at the moment. I mean, you may have come across it. Other people listening to this might have come across this. There's something happening in the church at the moment. Like, I would encourage anybody who hasn't done so to go and look up on the internet, Bible Society Quiet Revival, I think it's called. If you think, the church is declining in this country, it's not, it's growing. Or if you think, young people aren't going to church, no, they are. Lots more of them are going now than they were like 5 or 6 years ago. The Bible Society has got some astonishing data on this. It's like double or triple the number of young people are going to church now than there were 5, 6 years ago.
Wow.
And to the point where they had to go back and check all their stats and, their data and whatever. Their boffins had to kind of check that they'd done it right. The main point is not the numbers. The main point is God is doing something at the moment in our country and in the world. And now's a good time to kind of get in step with whatever the Spirit's doing. But at the same time, stack the chairs, but don't touch the PA.
Thank you. But if you do want to touch the PA and you feel you've got a calling to it, maybe just go along to your local tech. No, they're not called techs anymore, are they? Polytechnics, I'm showing my age. Go along to
your local college, yeah.
Your local college, thank you. But don't touch that PA. Rant over again. Well, what's very interesting, Andy, is that at the front end of the podcast, I had quite a few questions that I wanted to put to you.
Okay.
And we haven't got time.
Sorry.
We haven't talked about your book writing. We haven't talked about your ghost writing. It's just been an amazing podcast. The time's just flown. Quick questions.
Okay. I'll try and give you quick answers then.
I've got 3 questions.
Right. Okay.
Question number 1, science fiction. Why?
Science fiction and fantasy. So that the fantastic genres, if you want to call them that, books like that, they point to another world. They point to an imagination. They invite the imagination to kind of grapple with things. And I think Christians at our best, we can be very imaginative, in the best sense. I think it's in Hebrews. Hebrews refers to people of faith longing for another country, looking to the future, looking for something more. And science fiction, I think, appeals to that sense, as does fantasy writing. So like the people you mentioned, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, amazing writers with amazing imaginations. And I think for me, it's part of that sense of wonder and that sense of there is something else that is somewhere else. There is something to explore and the potential of it.
That's why you like doing it.
Yep.
That's the first one. Second one, I had mentioned about you being a ghostwriter.
Mm.
And we're not talking about, spooky things. We're talking about writing on behalf of somebody else.
Yeah.
You are pretending to be that person. You've had over 100,000 books sold on one particular person alone. which is fantastic. You also wrote one about a chap called Malcolm Mick Hilberry.
Yes.
Also known as Mick.
Yes.
And I think this sums up everything you are saying, because you wanted to help this chap out. He calls you a friend. He's sadly no longer here.
That's right, yeah.
I'd never heard of him.
No, you probably wouldn't have done.
Obviously, the book, Following Me Feet.
Yeah.
Deliberately written me. So he's obviously from East End of London or sort of that area.
Yeah, he was. His family were from London, South East London.
Why did you write the book about him? Tell me more.
At one level, I don't know why I did it. Another level, I did it because I just thought it was the right thing to do. So Malcolm, or Mick Hilberry, not a Christian. He was the most dyslexic person I've ever met. Just off the scale dyslexic. Poor old guy. He was at school in the 40s. So everybody thought he was just thick. He wasn't thick. He was dyslexic. He had a great talent for dancing. He did the only thing he could. He went into entertainment and show business. He worked with people who some people will have heard of. Like, he worked with the Chuckle Brothers a number of times. There's a picture in the book of the Chuckle Brothers from the 60s when they were working with him. I mean, this is me showing my age now. There was a TV program called Steptoe and Son years ago. So he worked with a lot of people who were big in show business. And he said to me one day, I got to know him because he was in a pantomime group. My son went to the pantomime group, and my son said, Dad, you've got to come along because I haven't got any other guys. You need to come along. So I ended up going along and, dressing up and all that nonsense. And I met Mick, and Mick said, I'd love to tell my story. There's no way he could have written his own story. He was off the scale dyslexic. So I said, I'll do that with you, Mick. And so I did. We went through it. He told me his story. I recorded it. I transcribed it all. We turned it into a book. We put some pictures in that he'd got. And he said, I want my book to be ready for my funeral. He said, I want copies given out at my funeral. We wrote his book and published it 2 or 3 years before he died.
Wow.
So we had a book launch for him, and all his old showbiz mates that none of us have heard of turned up. And I gave him a big Sharpie pen, and he signed these books, and we had a little launch for it, and somebody put on some catering, and we had a great day.
Wow. He
He saw his book printed. It was fantastic. And then we got a load more of them out when he died and passed away, and we had a funeral, and we did give out some at his funeral as well, which is what he wanted.
Wow.
That's the story of Mick.
Sounds like Count Arthur Strong, really. You know that radio and TV series?
He was great. He was shocking as well. He was great, bless him.
I wouldn't mind betting that by you doing that, there would have been a time when you then shared your faith.
Yeah, he knew I was a person of faith. He wasn't. He was not even close. He knew about the church. He'd been slightly involved with the church as a youngster. But, I mean, I won't go into it all now, but he'd gone a different way in many ways.
You just never know what would have happened.
You don't know. This is like, it is untidy. He was a gay man. He was living with his partner. They knew I was a person of faith. They welcomed me in. I did this thing with him. Many times I thought, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just feel it's the right thing to do with him. It wasn't an evangelistic thing in the sense of I talked to him about my faith. He knew I was a Christian, and I just went with it and did it. I don't know. It may be that, like, come the pearly gates, Jesus might say, that's great that you did that. Or he might say, I don't know why you wasted your time doing that. But who knows? I don't know. And in a sense, I'm not going to worry about it. It doesn't matter.
No, the fact is you actually got your hands dirty again.
Yeah, did what I could do.
Just doing something that he would love to have had happen. Brilliant. Question number 3.
Okay.
And the final one. And this is where I then say, Andrew J. Chamberlain, otherwise known as Andy. Who is your Christian hero, please?
There are a number of them. I would say possibly a guy called John Wimber. So John Wimber wasn't the founder of the Vineyard movement, but he was the guy who led it, and it grew under his authority and his leadership. He died 30 plus years ago now. And I went and heard him speak a couple of times, and he was from California, so he was like from another planet in some ways. But his manner and his style, I thought, yes, that's how I want to do ministry. That's how I want part of what my experience in church to be like that. There was something about the way he modeled and led ministry, by which I mean praying for people, creating a space for the Holy Spirit to come and do what he wants to do, which for me was like, that's how you do it. For me, I'm not saying it's the only way to do it at all. There's many different ways of engaging with God. But for me, that was like, that's the way I want to do ministry. That's the way I'd want that as part of my church context. And I thought that 30 years ago, and I still think it now. His wife would often come with him to these meetings, and she'd sit at the front and she'd get her knitting out, and she'd just be knitting and watching all this stuff. And it was all going on. People who've been to these big vineyard conferences will know, she was just doing her knitting. Just occasionally, I think somebody might ask him a question, and it could be a theological question. He'd say to her, what do we think of that? And she'd tell him what the answer is, and then he'd say it. I just think that's brilliant. Things like that. I know you laughed at that. And some people will think, what? What, you asked his wife and she was doing it? What's that? And other people would just see the kind of beauty and wisdom in it.
Yeah.
I just loved it.
It's also facilitating. He's trusting her. It's just brilliant.
Absolutely, he did. She passed away only a few months ago, and she was a wonderful woman. There's all kinds of stripes of charismatic church. Like, there's all kinds of stripes of church, and I'm not about criticizing any of them at all. But that one, for me, was like, yeah, this feels right. I can learn from this guy, and that's what I want to do.
Oh, I'd love to see that happen in a church on Sunday. People getting knitting out and sort of saying, well, I think that's rubbish myself. Andy, listen, it's been an absolute roller coaster. Brilliant.
Glad you enjoyed the ride.
Thank you so much for spending valuable time today. We must get you back again.
I'd love to come back.
Only the next time we'll talk about all your books you've written.
Yeah.
And other stuff.
Can I do a quick pitch for my writing conference?
No, we haven't got time. Sorry. Bye.
Sorry, Martin.
Please do.
I'm glad we haven't talked much about writing because we had other things to talk about, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I would say for Christians who are writers, you don't have to be writing Christian stuff. Anybody who's a person of faith and writing, I do run with my friend Ruth Lee, the writer and speaker Ruth Lee. I run a
previous guest.
You can hear what she's got to say on this show. I run something called the British Christian Writers Conference every year in September. We run it in Cambridge, where I live. So if you're anywhere near Cambridge or you want to come and have a weekend, a lot of people just come make the weekend of it. So that's Friday the 19th and Saturday the 20th of September. Do join us for the British Christian Writers Conference. You just put British Christian Writers Conference in the old internet and you will be able to find it. We've got loads of speakers this year. We're going to have a great time. We've got an amazing event within the conference planned for the Friday evening. If you're a Christian writer or you think you may be being called by God into writing, we get a lot of people come. They've not written anything really or published anything, but they're thinking about maybe it's something they want to get into. You could be C.S. Lewis or you could be you haven't written anything yet. If you feel that calling, you want to come along, check it out. You'd be very welcome to join us.
And if anybody would like to contact you personally, what you have shared,
yes,
how can they get hold of you, good sir?
They can email me. I don't know whether you do show notes for this podcast or put it in the show notes.
I call it blurb.
All right, the blurb. You could graduate to show notes if you want to.
I know, it's very nice.
It's thestorycraftpress@gmail.com. The Storycraft Press, which is all one word, @gmail.com. I mean, it's not difficult to track me down anyway. If you put Andy Chamberlain, author in, I've got a website as well.
Yes.
Most people will be able to track me down. And if anybody wants to drop me a line, that's great. And I can tell them a bit more about the conference.
Andy, thank you so much for sharing. It's been absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk.
We'll get you back again soon.
Be very happy to do so.
Thank you so much.
All
Cheers.
right.
God
Cheers.
bless. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It will really mean a lot. Thank you ever so much indeed. Next time on Off Grid Christianity.
Well, little things like that is, sometimes there are barriers to interacting with scripture. And so my job is trying to help projects to break down those barriers and see what they're doing. Who are the people that you can reach? How can you reach them? I can tell you this story. I can't tell you what part of the world it's in. Oh, I know, but I can't tell you.
It was Antarctica. There you go.
It was the penguins. We're trying to reach the penguins. They're suffering with all those tariffs.
You see, you are not the first person to mention this. I'm trying to stick up for the penguins here.
Yeah.
It's not just a black and white issue. Carry on.
Oh, no.
So please join me with our special guest, expert in culture and language, and now author, Tom Schwartz. Until next time then, cheerio.